few weeks ago, I did my first ever live performance. This video is about two things. First, I'll go over the gear I used, including what I love about them, but also what I would change. And second, I'll share the most important thing I learned about performing in front of real people. So stick around for that because you don't want to repeat the mistakes that I made. Let's start with the newest addition to my setup, which is the Zoom LiveTrak L6max. It's one of the smallest mixers on the market today, and I would say the headline feature is the 32-bit float recording mode, which basically means that you don't need to worry about clipping when you're recording audio into this thing. I really like the simplicity of this mixer. It's very straightforward to use. I feel like this mixer was pretty much made for the dawless setup because it has this ability to record straight into an SD card. It produces stems for each track you're recording. That was basically the way I could record this whole performance when I was performing live. And it has this neat feature that is called scenes, which basically is 4 presets that you can use to quickly jump to different mixer settings. Actually, let me show you this. So for the first track, I had the Novation Peak, as well as the Microcosm, was routed into this channel. And for this track, it was playing an ARP. So this is the element that is being played by the Novation. The Novation doesn't have any high-pass filters, and neither does the Microcosm. So I basically had to set some low attenuation of the low end on these channels. So you can see that on these LED rings, you can see that it's kind of dialed down. I can dial it down even more, and then you remove even more of the low end. And then I can quickly jump back to this scene button. So this now snaps back to the settings that I had configured for this performance. This was really convenient because then when I switched to the next track, then I was actually using the Novation for the bass. And so I wanted more low end. And so there's a point in time in the performance when I'm quickly pressing this B button to switch to the other scene. And that's super convenient. So I didn't really have a need for a mixer before, but now that I was performing live and routing my audio straight into a PA, I had to have this functionality to control the mix. Full disclaimer, I did reach out to Zoom and asked if they were willing to send me a device to test and use for this purpose. They were kind enough to send me one, so thank you, Zoom, for that. I will say one thing that I wish it did, I would really like to have sidechaining. The other thing is a smaller thing, but when I'm switching back to the scene, you can see it indicates with these LED rings the relative settings for each parameter, so like the levels, etc. It would be really nice if this screen just showed the values. It just would make a lot of sense to me. Next up is the Digitakt II. This is honestly turning into my favorite Elektron box. And that says a lot. If you're a subscriber to this channel, you know that that means a lot. But then again, I literally the other day made a track on the Digitone 2, so I'm also very excited about that. So I can't really decide which one is my ultimate favorite. But for this type of setup, when you're working with another external synthesizer, the Digitakt is just so convenient. I mean, I can sequence anything into the Novation, but I can also just quickly grab a phrase from the Novation Peak. Let me show you one thing about the Digitakt II that I think is just so cool. So here's was the second track that I played. If I mute everything here except for this piece, this is a guitar that a friend of mine recorded and sent over an audio file. Let me see, this one. And then I chopped it up in the Digitakt II using the grid mode, which is amazing for just creative use of samples. So I just want to show you how the original sound sounded like. So if I switch to one shot, so this is the original sound. And I turn that into this. Which is not even close, right? But that was the idea. I'm using it differently in some other places in the track. Here it sounded like this then. I'm using this to obviously shape the sound. So that's just one example of how insanely creative the Digitakt can be with samples. That's why I love this so much. There's another aspect of the Digitakt II that I can't quite explain, and it's not very scientific, but I just think that everything you make on this sounds great. There's something, about, the converters or the compressor, or something that just makes it sound great. Now, the thing that I wished it did differently is working side by side with the Digitone 2, the Digitone has this beautiful voice sharing feature. So you can essentially allocate different voices to different tracks. You also have the ARP, you have the chord and scale mode and all of that kind of stuff. I miss that when I'm working with the Digitakt. Composing harmonies is more difficult on the Digitakt, unless you're sequencing something live and grabbing full phrases. But I really wish that they could maybe make these two siblings, the Digitone and the Digitakt, a bit closer. I don't think that this will really eat into the Tonwerk territory. I think the strength of the Digi line is just the speed. I'm just so fast, and it's such a straightforward workflow. Whereas at least based on what I've seen about the Tonwerk, it's more of a deep device. It's almost like a modular setup that's built into one box, with all the bus routings and all of the effects and all that kind of stuff. Next up is the Novation Peak. I've already made a full review on the channel, so check that out if you're interested in that. The main thing, and the reason why I chose the Peak for this performance, was because of the control surface, tweaking things live. And I did that. The whole intro for the first track was me just going completely crazy on the knobs. Other than the control surface, the thing I really like about it is it sounds so great. It was a very obvious pairing for me because of how fun it is to use and how great it sounds. A couple of things I would change about it is, if I'm greedy, I would love for it to be able to play more than one sound at a time. So multi-temporality would be really nice. But again, when you're pairing it with a sampler like the Digitakt 2, you can work around it, so it's not a big deal. The other thing is I miss a high-pass filter. And I don't mean the actual high-pass filter. I mean just being able to attenuate some of the low end when making patches and producing sounds. Again, that's why I'm having the zoom. So I don't need it anymore because I have the zoom, but it would be nice to just be able to cut some of the low end. And it feels like such a small thing. I'm maybe spoiled because the Digitakt has not just the regular filter, but also this bass width filter that allows you to cut some of the low or the high end or both, which is really nice. Next up is the Hologram Microcosm. It's a beautiful effect pedal that also can sound beautiful. I've talked about this before in my track from scratch video, so check that out if you're interested in seeing how I'm leveraging this. For this particular performance, it was obviously playing the kind of the glitchy delay part. I can give you a quick demo. So here's how I started the whole performance. I deliberately started with something that sounds pretty strange, disorienting, and I used the microcosm to amplify that feeling even more. So here's the impact that the microcosm has. I played around obviously with a bunch of different stuff here to eventually end up on something that is a bit more melodic. So, and then I start to introduce some other elements like the bass to kind of go from this crazy state to something more melodic. But again, if I remove the hologram, it's a very different vibe. So it definitely played a strong role in just creating a bigger atmosphere. Essentially, that's what the hologram does to me, is it makes things sound bigger. Perhaps it's a bit of a one-trick pony, if I'm being critical. It can certainly do a lot of different types of glitches, but it's all glitches. All in all, it's a great effect pedal. It can really color the sounds and make things very interesting, particularly if you want to create a bit of a bigger atmosphere. The one thing I would like for it to do differently is actually the same thing as the Novation Peak. I would love for it to have a high-pass filter. Let's talk about the LaunchControl XL3. This is my main MIDI controller. It's essentially the control surface that I was using to control everything except for the Peak and the microcosm. I control those directly. I actually kept things very simple from a MIDI standpoint. I'm just having MIDI routed from the Digitakt 2 into Novation, so that's controlling the Novation, and then the LaunchControl is routed into the Digitakt. That's it. I'm not using any other MIDI settings. I could go crazy and have everything synced, but I basically just tapped on this thing to get it to play in the same BPM as the rest of the project, and that was easy enough. I won't talk too much about the LaunchControl XL. I have a video that goes over exactly the setup that I'm using for Elektron boxes. It's a super versatile MIDI controller. I really like it. I especially like the color coding. I know that this is the pad. I know that this is the ARP. I know that this is the lead. And I know that this is the bass. And that's just because I've set that system up. The one thing I would change about the LaunchControl XL3, honestly, is I think it would be lovely if it supported aftertouch messages. So you have these macros. So you have modulation wheel macro. This is, for example, for the kick track. You know, I can set it up so that I'm changing a lot of different parameters when I'm moving this fader. Same with breath control. I have that mapped to this line of encoders. I don't have anything for aftertouch, even though there's a perfectly fine macro here as well, and that's just because this doesn't support it. It would be nice if it supported it, because aftertouch is also a mod destination on the Novation Peak, so this would open up for far more utility than just Elektron boxes. This would be useful for any synthesizer that supports aftertouch. One final piece of gear before we talk about the actual lessons learned from performing live in front of an audience is the OneOdio Studio Max 2 headphones. So this is a wireless headphone transmitter. It transmits audio into the headphones, and it does it with a 9 millisecond latency, which is small enough that I can't even hear it when I'm playing something. So what I'm hearing in my headphones is essentially one-to-one in sync with what was played in the PA, which meant that I didn't have to worry about tripping over a cable. There was a lot of cables going on when I was performing, so this is one thing that I didn't have to worry about. Full disclaimer, I got this as part of a collaboration. I really like them though. I took them with my camper this summer to make music, and this is just one less cable to worry about, and I'm using it now for my YouTube recordings. They sound good too, surprisingly good, and it has a built-in EQ that lets you configure it. The one thing I would change about these is you have to press and hold the power button 3 seconds on both the headphones and the transmitter. That's really annoying. I don't understand why they don't just limit it to 1 second. Who holds the button for 3 seconds? It feels like an eternity when you're preparing for a jam. So, minor complaint, but hey, I'm good at that. So that was the gear part, but now I want to talk about the real lessons learned. There's 4 key things I learned from this, and the most important one is number 4. The first lesson is something that I hadn't fully prepared for, and it took me by surprise. It was really dark and messy at the venue. People were blowing smoke at me. To be honest, I really appreciated that. It added to the whole experience, but it was difficult to see what was going on in front of me. And it revealed a difference in these devices that I hadn't thought about before. If you look at the Digitakt II, you can see that the buttons are lit up. So even in pitch darkness, you can still see that this is the filter button. You can see that this is the amp button. On the LaunchControl, you have these colors. So you can see the colors, and this is such an obvious and straightforward layout. So it's very easy to know once you know what the colors mean for you. The Novation Peak has just these white labels. They're white, thankfully, but I couldn't read what was on these labels. So I had to go by muscle memory. Basically, I knew obviously that this was the filter, but I had to memorize these other encoders and feel my way around. I made some small mistakes. I don't think anyone noticed, but the Elektron boxes are clearly meant for live performance. So they built this design interface to make that very straightforward. So the obvious lesson here is to rehearse, to practice your gear as much as possible so that muscle memory eventually starts to kick in. But on the other hand, don't practice too much. I had spent weeks rehearsing for this performance, to the point where I knew pretty much every single transition on every single track that I was supposed to make. The flip side of that is that it didn't allow me for almost any in-the-moment creativity. I was basically just following my playbook. And to me, that was, a blessing and a curse. It was nice to have something that I could really focus on, because I will admit I was nervous standing in front of people like that. The lesson for me, or one thing that I would like to play around with a bit next time, would be to maybe go a bit easier on the elaborate nature of the performance itself, because, and I'll talk about that later, no one understands what you're doing in front of these devices anyway when you're performing, so just keeping it a bit more loose would have probably made it more fun for me. The third lesson for me is about moving with intention. What I mean is, when I was performing, my music is very layered. There's a lot of different elements that all go together. Let me give you an example. So this is the second track. If you unmute the bass and the drums, there's a bunch of different elements playing at the same time. It's sort of like a texture map of sound, a soundscape, if you will. If I play them individually, you have this chord, pad chords. There's some other things in the background as well. You can hear that. And then you have this one. This is an arc that I stole from Novation. I basically played a full phrase and then I sampled it. So it's on the Digitakt. And then you have this lead. It's also sampled from the Novation Peak. And all of these faders do something to each sound. This is another one. And this is the third one. And those are all playing at the same time. You get this kind of... The thing here is, I was moving these faders quite a bit. I was having a very deliberate plan to myself for how I wanted things to sound and when I want energy to increase and decrease. The thing is, most people wouldn't even understand what I was doing because, I mean, I was doing these kind of micro movements all the time. I wasn't doing this kind of, you know, when David Letterman is drinking coffee, it's like, he's not drinking coffee like this. He's drinking coffee like this, like with the elbow out. It is really clear that he's drinking coffee. And I think I would like to drink coffee like David Letterman, basically in my next performance. I should do more of that. Basically, when I'm twisting an encoder, there should be some very distinct connection to the sound so that people understand what I'm doing. This is very easy when you're, for example, playing a guitar. You can immediately tell that when you're strumming the strings, you hear it. So the lesson learned for me is that I think I need to be a bit more simple and explicit and deliberate, which leads me to the last lesson, which is to look up. So I noticed something really interesting when I was looking at the footage of this performance. I saw that every time I looked people in the eye, they started to move more. And I had this hypothesis that maybe that's the thing I didn't do enough of because I was so busy just, moving faders and twisting some knobs that I wasn't really having any space and time to pay attention to what was going on. There was a lot of people. So I actually reached out to Matt, aka EasyBot, who has done far many more live performances than I had. And I asked him, how do you make people dance? And his answer was striking and quite simple. He said, you look people in the eye, you smile, and then you shake your ass off. I'll take the first two at least, for sure. I saw that with my own eyes. I'm not sure about number 3. For me, personally, I think that's more of an EasyBot thing. And Matt, if you're watching this, maybe you can do a tutorial for your ass-shaking movements. I think people would be really interested. If you're a regular viewer of my channel, you're probably subscribed to EasyBot already, but just in case, I'm leaving a link in the description. And the lesson learned for myself is I need to look up more. I can look as busy as I want, twisting knobs and faders and being very happy about a perfect performance, but if I'm not connecting with the audience, what's the point? They're the ones you should focus on, not your perfect transitions. If you have other tips for a better live performance, please drop a comment and share your learnings. I think we're all here to learn together. I'm still on holiday, so I'm technically not really spending much time here in the studio, but I'm making music in the camper, and I have some exciting stuff to share soon. I'm making music with the Redshift 6, the Digitone, and the Digitakt II. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. Obviously, you want to subscribe anyway, right? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.